Hi there, everybody. A very warm welcome to each one of you to PSTV. I am Sapna Mahadevan, your host for this wonderful evening, and I am back once again with another fresh new episode of the Fiction Story Writing Masterclass. And with all of the comments that I can see in the chat box here, I know that all of my viewers here are really set and ready for the episode, right? Gunjan, Varun, Jennifer, thanks a lot for those comments there. Hello to all of you. A very good evening. Right, Enzo. Great to see you in today's live here. Lovely. So thanks a lot again for taking time out to join our live episode. And let us get started with today's episode with the same energy and with the same strength, right? So here is today's episode. We have a lot to explore in today's episode. There's going to be action as one of the themes, and I'm sure that young guns here are really going to love the genre. Yes. So what we need for story writing or for telling a story by ourselves is, of course, imagination. Yes. So today as well, run your imagination wild, unleash the writer in you, and here it is, the fiction story writing masterclass. Yes. And coming up, let me also show you all of those gamut of activities that we have planned specially for our wonderful audience members here. And here is the list that comes up next. So as always, I'm going to give you pointers on what are some of the quintessential elements for you to think about while you're writing a story. And then, of course, that would also be coming up with some tips and tricks on how you can make it more and more engaging for your audiences. And we also have a lot of fun segments added on to today's episode. And there is a Google It segment, which is going to help you a lot with your vocabulary. So please do have a pen and a paper right beside you so that you can jot down all of those Google It words. And let me tell you that viewers have been telling us that how all of these words are helping them with their vocabulary, how it is turning to be like a repository of words which you can really check on, keep on revising, and try using in your diction wherever appropriate, right? So yes, do be ready with that pen and a piece of paper maybe, and then after that you can also try and make a creative journal of sorts where you can be writing down all of these Google It words, right? So yes, that is one of the segments there. Then we also have icebreaker questions which keep coming up all throughout the episode. And let me now quickly take you to the first icebreaker question for today, and there it is right in front of your screens now. That's quite an easy one. What would you prefer? Will it be pizza or will it be burger? Yes, I know both of these options are really mouth-watering, and we are going to drool for it every time that we hear the name. But which one is the one that you're going to pick and choose? That's the question here: pizza or burger, right? So let me see what is the option that I get here first onto my chat box. Fast food, and I think I would really love to go with pizza, maybe with different toppings. Given these two options, yes. Okay, and yes, I do get pizza there in the chat box. Lovely. Gunjan says hi. Hello there, Gunjan. And pizza comes up next again. So quickly write out your answers in the chat box here. Will you go for pizza or would you prefer a burger over pizza? That's the question here. That's quite simple. And I can see that I have pizza in the chat box there. There's only one burger coming up there in the chat box. So that's the only answer that I can see here. But of course, pizza wins hands down, isn't it? Lovely. McD coming up there. Great. So yes, burger it is. And pizza coming up there again. Great. So let's get going ahead into our next segment. We have a mixed bag of responses here, but still, I think pizza is winning hands down. I'm not really going to check all of those answers there, right? I cannot keep counting. But yes, My chat box is really scrolling up and down here. And now let's move ahead into our next segment after that first icebreaker question. And the golden question that we have for today is, what's the genre? So, what is it in our 176th episode that we are going to bring out to you? Again, story writing, by the number of episodes that we have done, you would imagine how vast this whole area is, right? And totally up to you which is the genre that you would want to pick and choose and try writing, or maybe try your hands on. Yes. So here today we have another different genre that we have not come up with and we have not explored before. And this one is action, right? So action is the genre, the broader one that we are going to deal with today. And let me tell you what action entails. Of course, we would understand the word action. We can, when I say that word there, you're going to think about a lot of punches, maybe. Yes, a fight that's happening. You can clearly visualize a fight with a lot of scenes that has maybe punches and physical feats, right? Now, that is what we mean by action here. This genre, it has a lot of physical action that takes storytelling precedence, and it thrusts the protagonist into a series of challenges, right? Now, these challenges will include multiple fight scenes, having daring physical feats. There are tense chases and violence such as shootouts, maybe. Now, the narrative structure of an action story, it follows an ordered cause and effect trajectory. So there is always something that is triggering this action scene, right? So that's the broader genre that we are going to explore for today. And in action, what is the subgenre for the day? Let me give you that one here. There it is. So we are going to deal with disaster action stories. Yes. So disaster books, wherever you find a story which has focus on disaster, it is one kind of a literary genre which involves detailed descriptions of major historical disasters, and it is often based on historical records or personal testimonies of people who have experienced that trauma, the survivors who have experienced this disaster firsthand, right? Since reportage of both natural disasters as well as non-made disasters is commonplace, authors tend to be journalists who develop their news reports into books, right? So that's how this get converted into stories. And of course, you can add a lot of varied ingredients to make that delicious and scrumptious dish. Yes. So along with that focus on disaster action, maybe you can put in a romantic angle somewhere there in the story, or maybe you can think about an angle where there is a blooming friendship, right? So many themes that we can be including in our disaster action. Yes, think about camaraderie between friends, right? Now, while usually well written, they can lose sight of the causes, especially in man made catastrophes where poor engineering, human error, or even negligence have combined to cause the failure. So, you have to understand that disasters can be of two types. One would be natural, like maybe an earthquake or a raging fire, maybe a sandstorm, right? So all of these could be man-made natural disasters. But the other type that you could be taking up as a topic for your story could be a man-made disaster as well, which would be maybe poor engineering, where maybe a scientist is trying to develop something and everything goes totally off site, and then what happens next is what your story will entail, right? So it could be human judgment error, it could be negligence on the part of humans, which could also be forming a man-made disaster. Yes. So think about both of these disasters and try incorporating that into your story, which has a lot of action scenes, and that is plot for your genre for today, which is disaster action. Yes. So do give me a thumbs up, maybe any kind of symbol or sign here in the chat box that will let me know that you are liking this particular subgenre of the day, right? Disaster action it is that we are going to explore. And let's move ahead into the next segment. the next segment is our first Google it word, which is catastrophe, right? So, what is the meaning of catastrophe? Let me get you that. So it is any kind of an event that causes sudden damage or a suffering, or maybe that causes a disaster. Yes, that is a catastrophe, and you can be using that wherever appropriate. Synonyms could be a calamity or a disaster, or maybe ruination. All of this could be synonyms for catastrophe, right? And that's how it is pronounced. It is catastrophe, an event that causes a disaster or any great and usually sudden damage. Yes, so that's the word there, the first one. And a catastrophe is what we are going to experience in an action disaster story. And jot that word down in your Google It journal. Try using it wherever appropriate. And I have comments here in the chat box. Hello to all of you, first of all. All of you sending me your love here in the chat box. Thanks a lot for that. And I can see yay messages in the chat box there. There are thumbs ups as well. So, yes, you all love this genre, right? Action is something that my young audiences will definitely love, isn't it? And Angel Hanu. My name is that Hania, Hanaya? I'm not sure how you're pronouncing that word there, but maybe I'll call you Angel. Is that good enough? Are you okay with that name there? Do give me a thumbs up, maybe. And yes, hello there. Thanks for joining my live here. And the first Google it word, catastrophe. Divya here giving me the Google it meaning for catastrophe. Thanks a lot, Divya, for taking time out to write out that or to type out that comment there. Great. And you have the correct understanding of catastrophe. And yes, jot that word down. Okay. So Angel says yes, and great. So I'm going to call you Angel, right? Okay, lovely. So let's move ahead, and we come to the next icebreaker question. And here it is. What is your favorite game? That's the next question that we have here. So quickly in the chat box, write to me what's your favorite game. It could be an indoor game, an outdoor game, probably, or even online games that you all play. So, favorite game is the next question. I get Monopoly first. There are word games that I get here. Granny, okay. Angel says Granny. Dafia says Scrabble. That's all of our favorites, right? Monopoly and Scrabble. Granny is an online game. I'm aware of that, Angel. And what else? Sudoku. Wow. Yes, even I love solving Sudokus. And great. Thanks again for all of those answers. I get football next here. Cricket. How can we forget cricket, right? Yes, Varun, thanks a lot for your answer there. Okay, lovely. So yes, most popular favorite games coming up here in the chat box. We have Granny, cricket, football, Monopoly, Scrabble, word games, and Sudoku. Great. So let's move ahead into our next segment here, and here it is, establishing the essentials, right? So for writing an action disaster story, what are the essentials that you're going to keep in mind? Yes, so three definite essentials that I'm going to bring out to you today as well. All of these quintessential elements, they really have the focus of our story, and if thought about correctly, if written perfectly, then those are the perfect blend of ingredients that you can have for a scrumptious book, right? So here are the three elements that we have for today. We have the characters, which is again one of the backbones of our story. We need characters in our story to get the narrative going ahead, right? And then there is a talk about disastrous situations. So you want your audience members to know what is the disaster that has come across the protagonist in our action disaster story, and also the settings of our story, right? So here, let me come to the settings later, maybe. So first of all, let's look at the first element in essentials, which is the characters, right? So here is the first element. The starting point in our action disaster story is the hero's strong suit, his or her particular aptitude, or the particular attitude that the hero has, right? This means that they are particularly well suited for what the plot's throwing at them, right? Instead of fleeing the situation, they are really determined individuals who want to somehow come out of that trap of that disaster. And seeing the situation, the hero is definitely going to dig in and do whatever they can to do to help people. The climax of the story is not a perfect storm of fury, but there is relief, a stay against the Armageddon, and the members of your cast fall into one of the two categories. One of them would be selfish as hell, and the other would be selfless individuals who only care for others, right? So the antagonist of our story, the villain, is, of course, we all know, going to be entirely selfish, right? And the lead characters are going to be selfless individuals who are going to try and help the people and the community at large, right? Whenever that disaster strikes, yes. So these are the characters that we want in our story. There are lead characters who are determined individuals, they are selfless, and they have that caring and that generous attitude, right? And they are going to pitch in whenever the disaster strikes. And apart from that, we also have antagonists in our story who are going to have a clash of interest with the lead characters. And let me also tell you, you can have a lot of side characters in your action disaster story, because that is how the narrative is going to go ahead. Yes, you would have seen in movies or maybe in documentaries, whenever we talk about a particular disaster that has happened in the past, then there are a lot of characters who give testimony, who are survivors, who talk about that fateful day and what happened on that particular day. And there are heartwarming stories of survival, right? So there could be a lot of characters that you can include in your action disaster story. Those This is the first essential character here. And then the second element that we have is the disastrous situation. Yes, so what was the situation, what was the disaster? You can maybe talk about that in length and let your audience members know what is the catastrophe, what was the damage that was caused. Yes. Now, apart from that, what you can be doing here is maybe you can talk about the survival efforts, how that happened, what are the experiences that individuals or survivors have, the threat that they were facing because of that disaster, and how it affected them and their families, right? And we can also be talking about a lot of what if scenarios. The best disaster stories, they definitely comment upon the negative effects of advancing technology. They talk about the how different individuals have different capacity, and how they are sometimes inept at handling such situations. Yes, so we can also have a lot of positive news in our story when we talk about how some people were able to uplift the morale of the people who got an effect from that disaster, right? And provide a lot of detail about the survival skills as well. Yes, so too many things that you can be having for your story here. There could be heartwarming stories that you want to recite, and of course you can also take inspiration from some real life disasters, historical disasters that have happened in the past. Yes, and there could be a talk of all of these survival skills, the coping up mechanism that people had, how the lead protagonist could uplift the morale of the community and try and help most of the people there, right? And also give vivid descriptions of how the disaster struck. Yes, so all of these put together is one of my essentials here, which is the disastrous situation. And it is definitely going to give your audiences a thrill to come to know as to, when disaster strikes, then how it feels, right? So that is what we want to establish here in one of our essentials, the disastrous situation, and write it in a style which gives a lot of adjectives, and it gives a clear visualization to your audience, right? Now, after the second element here, the disastrous situation, the first one, of course, was all to do about the characters. The second one is about the disaster, the catastrophe. And now the third element that we have here is the setting. Now, the setting of the story needs to be vast. The disastrous event that would have taken place, you're going to elaborate and give a lot of details of the destruction that was caused, and talk about the place that needs to be penned properly. Also, the setting should include people and their reaction towards the disaster, right? Now, one could also include that how there was mismanagement, how there was chaos all throughout the place. And maybe we can talk about, if we are talking about, say, earthquake as one of our examples for the catastrophe, right? Then what were the after effects? Maybe we can talk about a short circuit that happened in one of the buildings, or maybe a bridge collapsing. And all of this could enhance the disaster, and that is in a way going to again give a lot of um, or a lot of curiosity to your audience members, right? And they are wanting to know, they are eager enough to know, to have a page step compelling turn, to just come to know what happens next, whether people survived or not, right? So these are the settings that we would want to have for our disaster action story. Yes, it needs to be really vast. There's also going to be a talk about the before and the after. So you might want to give vivid descriptions of the place before disaster struck. Maybe you can talk about the greenery and the whole ambience, right? And after the disaster struck, how all of this changes is something that you would want to maybe mention out in your story, right? So these were the three essentials that we saw. One was the characters, and the other one the setting. These are again two imperative elements to our story. And for our action disaster story, the other element that we would really want to focus on is the catastrophe. What was the disaster, and what was the coping mechanism, the survival skills that was required to overcome this particular disaster, right? Now, after all of these essentials here, let's quickly get going to the next segment. This is our Google It segment again. And here is the next word that we have for our Google It segment. The word is scenario, right? Now, scenario would be maybe a setting, a sense of place in a particular work or literature, right? It could also be an outline for a film or a novel, or a straight stage work that could also be said or called as a scenario, right? So scenarios could be examples of the scene that's playing out. Maybe the sense of place, a setting for a particular story can also be called as a scenario, right? So do check out the word in Google, jot it down in your Google It journal. And that was the second word that we had. The first one was catastrophe, right? So, yes, after this Google It segment, let's move ahead into our next segment, which is an icebreaker question. And the question says, what costume would you prefer for Halloween? Okay, so what is that scary, scary costume that you're going to go ahead with for Halloween? Do let me know your answers here in the chat box. What is it that you're going to do to terrify your friends and family members for Halloween, right? So, yes, we're going to wait for your answers there. Let me see what all answers, amusing ones, that I get here in the chat box. Costume that you would prefer for Halloween is one of the questions there. Ponder over this question, think it through, and give me answers in the chat box, right? Okay. So, yes, Anshu tells me that she would apply a lot of scary makeup. Okay. I know, maybe dark eyes, and what else? A sad face, maybe, right? Okay. A black whale is another comment that I get here. That is also interesting, isn't it? Makeup all over the face with Blood smearings. Okay, that's going to really look scary, isn't it? Thanks a lot for that, Enzo. Um, yes. So popular comments are makeups, makeup that you're going to apply to your face, and I'll have a dagger maybe. Okay. So maybe you're going to also have a weapon with you, right? Of course, that's going to be a toy weapon. Yes. Great. So, yes, thanks a lot for all of those answers. I know that you're all dressing up for your Halloween, right? Lovely. Trick or treat. Great. Okay, so let's move ahead after that icebreaker question to our next segment. This is again expert tip on establishing the essentials, right? So we know what are the essentials, but if I want to give you two expert tips here, then let me tell you that if the disaster itself is going to provide an exciting plot for the external story engine, then that's really going to be working for our story, right? The message of hope that resides in the interior world of the characters is again something that you would want to write in your story. Yes, there is a lot of despair already with the disaster, the catastrophe that has struck, whatever the damage has been done. Yes, so to pep up and to have a lot of energy going for our story, maybe we can talk about hope that people are clinging on to, right? And hope is centered in how your hero reacts to the challenges, yes, and how the disaster marks them and how it opens them to change or transformation is something that your audience is really going to vouch for, right? So let your audiences root for the hero in our story, the lead character who's going to take center stage, the cynosure of all eyes in our story. Let your audiences root for them with the attitude that they portray, right? So let them have a determined attitude, and they are going to do whatever they can. They are not leaving any stone unturned to help all of those people who are struck with despair. Yes, so hope is that one word that people are going to cling on to and give a lot of positive energy into your story, right? So that's one expert tip here. And now moving ahead to the second expert tip. Writing about disasters requires a lot of attention to detail and accuracy. So whatever that disaster that you're going to introduce into your story, maybe you can research on that topic and check on what could be the after effects of that disaster. You have to dig in and do a lot of research. If you're writing about a documented disaster, then go to the source. Interviewing those who lived through it can also be one of the ways that authors generally use to write their story, right? And maybe you can read some of the accounts or some of the experiences that survivors had. You can check for that information online and use that for your narrative. It's definitely going to enrich your narrative there because of the specificity of the details, right? So this is again the second expert tip that we have in establishing the essentials. And with that, let's move ahead to one of our fun segments. It is the Think Like a Pro segment. Here it is. And you need to guess some of these disastrous elements just by looking at the pictures. Yes. So I have four pictures here for today, right? So brace yourselves for the first one. There it is. Can you comment and let me know what this element looks like to you? What is this element is the question here. Put on your thinking caps and try giving me the word in the chat box. Okay, so Nisha says it is a bomb. Um, um, there can be a better word for that. Question mark coming up there. Bomb again. That's not a bomb. There's a better word for it. Maybe if you can try and attempt. Okay, so let me reveal the answer. It is a grenade, right? Okay, now let's move ahead to the second one. This is again another catastrophe that we can evidently see in that picture there. Yes. And when does this happen? All of this dilapidation, how does this happen? What is the name of that particular catastrophe? That is correct. It is an earthquake, right? That is right. Earthquake it is. And Yes, all of you are correct. That is an earthquake. And let's move ahead to the third one. Here it is. Okay, so that's quite easy, isn't it? Um, all the lava flowing out. What is that? Earthquake is the correct answer. We are getting answers for the previous question there. And yes, that is a volcano. That is correct again. Eruption of a volcano, that's right. And yes, thanks again for all of those answers, taking time out to be such a participative audience here. I'm really glad. And volcano is the correct answer. So, yes, now we have just the last one to go. And here it is. What is that? Military tank. Okay, I can give you that. That's a tank. That's correct again. So, yes, let me see what's the answer here. It is tank. Okay, great. So, most of the answers have been correct here. Thanks a lot for writing out your answers in the chat box. And yes, with that, we come to the end of our Think Like a Pro segment. That was interesting, isn't it, Nisha? Yes, thanks a lot again. And let's move ahead into our next segment here. So, back to back, we have another fun segment. This is the movie title trivia, and I'm going to show you some pictures again. And you need to guess these popular disaster action movie titles, or maybe they could be a series as well. Yes. So, here is the first picture that we have. Do you know the name of this picture? Let me give you some time so that you can write out your answer there. A famous popular movie. And yes, that is the correct answer. Great going there. War of the Worlds. That's the correct answer. And moving ahead to the second picture here. There we go. Another interesting movie. Can't recall is one of the comment that I get there. This was one of the interesting movies, apocalyptic in nature, and it also could be categorized into sci-fi. That is correct again. It is 2012, the end of the world, right? Yes, that is correct again. Thanks a lot for that. And yes, let's move ahead. So let me showcase. Yes, that is 2012. And here is the third one. This is, I know all of you can guess this one, right? Titanic. That is correct again. Here we go. Lovely. Some heartwarming, really an heartwarming movie there, right? And let's move ahead to the next one quickly. There it is. Okay, so another interesting movie. We're all of them are action disasters that we are looking out for today. Yes. So 2012 was correct. That is the response that I am still getting here. That is correct again. It is Pacific Rim. Great. Lovely. Now let's move ahead to the next one. We have two more left. There it is. So we can see a lot of damage done there in that picture. I can't see any comments coming up here. So let me move ahead and reveal the answer, right? So there it is. It is The Countdown to Disaster. The name of the movie was Shockwave. And here comes the last one for the day. Armageddon. That's correct again. So here it is. And with that, we come to the end of our movie title trivia. And that was really fun playing this segment along with all of you people here. Great. Yes, you've seen that one. Richa says, lovely. And I have watched Titanic. That's also great. Um, Pacific Rim was interesting. Okay, great. Lovely to know all of your answers. So the next slide says just that you've already given me answers. The best of the disaster action movies that you've all watched, right? Um, yes, all of the action that we can think of, isn't it? Great. So let's move ahead into the next segment. After all of those essentials, now let's talk about some of the plot building pointers which are going to really help us in make transforming our plot into something of more and more interest, right? And keeping our audiences engaged throughout the story, right? And Alpha Gaming gives me 2012 there. That's right. I think I'm getting your responses a bit late here. So yes, that was the correct name of the movie. And let me now move ahead into, if I'm not right, if I am not mistaken, then I think Alpha Gaming Aditya was the name behind that handle there, if I'm not mistaken. Do give me a thumbs up. Yes. So, plotting the plot is the next segment that we are going to explore now. Three important elements in a plot for writing an engaging disaster action story. Let's look at all of those three pointers there. The first one is the conflict. What is the clash of interest here? And then also more about the disastrous action. And finally, the resolution. How do we close our book, right? So these are the three elements that we have here. Mm, okay, got that. You can mention out your name here, maybe. Yes. Welcome to our live. Okay, and these are the plot building pointers that we are going to now talk about for writing an interesting and an absorbing action disaster story, right? So here is the first one, which is the conflict. So we can really have a lot of fun with action scenes and seeing how that unfolds, but without the element of danger or a potentially disastrous outcome, it lacks the excitement that we are trying to derive. Yes, so keep the audiences onto the edge of their seats by writing about the action skillfully and trying to portray a lot of potential danger as well. Yes, now action writing should make the audience feel um, a lot of tension that they have all throughout their reading of the story, and there needs to be a lot of high stakes here for the hero, and maybe all of the events, how they are going to turn out with the unfolding of that action, that also should be written about in the narrative, right? So maybe have a fast pace for your story. Do not bore your audiences with a lot of dialogue. Give crisp dialogues there so that you can pack a punch with your action scenes. And this is what we want for our raging clash of interest in our story, right? Now, in a great action disaster story, the moments in between where the action is happening should still feel alive, and the story should be always progressing further. Yes. Now, even if your hero isn't facing off against the villain, the scenes without the action should still be driven by the characters' goals and their motivations and their aspirations, and the readers or the viewers may kind of become disinterested by a sudden slump in energy and the stagnancy to the writing. Yes, so even if you're not going to talk about an action scene happening in a particular scenario, even then try to keep up the pace of the book with your writing style. Yes. Now, after that, the second element that we are going to deal with here is the disastrous action. So you can use action in a concise and in an impactful manner in order to deliver strong images for the audience. Yes. The clearer your scenes are, the more easily the audience is going to understand and absorb them. And when you focus so much on the overarching plot of the story and see the real stakes of the story from the viewpoint of uh, you know what writers, especially nearing the end of the story, do, it is easy to lose your perspective when it comes to empathizing with your characters. Yes. So always make it a point to have high stakes throughout your story. There is going to be a potential danger that your protagonist always has lurking throughout the story, right? And you need to be concise to pack that punch into your story and give a lot of vivid imagination to your audiences. There should be strong images that you're going to write into your story, which is going to help your audience with a better understanding of your story's plot, right? So that's how a disastrous action should be written. And now the third element that we have here is the resolution, the denouement of the story, where you tie up all of the loose ends and you give a satisfying ending to your story. Now, see to it that an action disaster always ends on a positive note. It is not going to be a happy ending because there is a lot of despair, there is a lot of damage that has already happened, right? But what we can do here is probably we can give a satisfying ending to our story with all of those after effects of the apocalypse. The protagonist may or may not survive, but in either of the cases, they may give their best shot to save the world, right? So that's how we are going to remember the protagonist. If they do not survive, then people are going to have high regards for our protagonist because they definitely had that determination to help people all around, right? So that's how we are going to end our story, which is a disastrous action story. And of course there's not going to be a happy ending, but try and give an ending which has a happy tone to it, or which has a positive tone to it, right? So this is the third element in plotting the plot, the resolution. And then let's also check what is the next word that we have in our Google It segment. Yes, so here is Here is the next word that we have in our Google It segment, apocalypse. And apocalypse would be the final destruction of the world. And that's what it is. Google gives you the definition of, right? And it could be any event that involves a lot of destruction or damage, which is to a catastrophic scale, right? So not something which involves a small community. This is something which involves the world at large, right? It is catastrophic in scale, and there is a lot of damage and destruction, right? So that's the word there, the third one in our Google It segment, which is apocalypse. And with that, let's move ahead into our expert tip for plotting the plot. Yes. So again, for writing an engaging story in our action disaster genre, what is one of the expert tips that you would want to share, or maybe keep in mind while you're going to write an action disaster, is something that we are going to see next. And here is the first expert tip for writing an engaging action disaster story. Now, the thing that you need to keep in mind is that often it is too easy to limit the failure of your hero, and making the failed confrontation seems like an isolated incident. Yeah, right. So using the disaster, you can make all of these elements seem more unified and less like a conglomeration of loosely related story arcs, particularly when you have multiple secondary protagonists and supporting characters. So take the time to consider the disaster from multiple points of view and try putting everything together. It should not feel to your audiences that there are a lot of loose ends which have not been covered in your story, right? So most usually in an action disaster story, we see that there are a lot of side characters, a lot of protagonists who try and help people all around, although there is only one or maybe two lead protagonist in our story, but there are other people who are trying to help the community at large with the disaster that has struck. Yes. So try and see to it that all of these elements are kind of like unified, and they are like a conglomeration, that is a collection of story arcs. Yes, and that's going to really help build your story forward. And now the second expert tip that we have here is that you will note that most of the plot points that we have discussed up till now, they have been dynamic and complete enough to merit everything that we are talking in our plot building pointer. However, as you progress towards the later plot of your story, this will become variable, and with the disaster in particular, some stories will contain a disaster that lasts throughout the chapter or throughout the story, and others will have disasters that last only till a certain part of the book, right? So ultimately, the choice of a long and important disaster or a short and a subtle one lies on you as a creative writer. You can think of maybe the whole plot talks about that disaster and it revolves around it, or maybe there is only a talk of one particular disaster that has struck, and it is a part of your story only till maybe the mid part of your story, and then you talk about the after effects of it, right? So creative writing again is something that has a lot of imagination, and try and be as creative as you want to. There is a lot of carpet under your feet, and totally depends on you on how you want to take your story forward. Yes, so that is one of the other expert tips here. And let's move ahead with our next google it word, which is conglomeration. Yes, now conglomeration would be a number of different things that you group together. Yes, so like for instance, if you're going to talk about an earthquake as a disaster that has struck in your story, yes, now there would be a lot of experiences that people will have all around, and there would be heartwarming stories that you would want to feature in your book, right? So this is going to be like a collection of story arcs that you're going to have put into one main plot of your story, right? So that's what a conglomeration is. It is a mixed bag, a cluster, or maybe a mix and a variety of different items which we put together. Yes, so that's the word conglomeration. And do jot that word down in your google it journal. That is the last word that we have in our google it segment. Yes, and now let's move ahead to our recommendation of the day. There it is. It is a movie for today, and that is the recommendation for um, today's episode of action disaster, right? And now let's quickly move ahead to our next segment, which is a fun segment again, and it is the jumbled words, right? So I'm going to show you some words which are all jumbled up, and you need to unjumble them and try finding out the correct meaningful word. Yes, so let me give you a clue that all of these words are used in the lesson of today. Here is the first word that we have. That's quite a big word there, 10-letter word. Quickly let me know what is how when you unjumble that word, what is that meaningful word that you get in the chat box here. So there is a prefix there, and try finding it out so that you can quickly make that word up. Rajbala Singh, thanks a lot for that like. Yes, that is correct. It is precedence. Here it is. Great. Okay, so let's move ahead to the next one. There we go. Another 8-letter word. So we are talking about this word a lot in today's episode. We have been talking about it a lot. It also has a synonym with catastrophe, disaster. That's right. That is the next word here. Correct. Disaster is the correct word. And let's move ahead to the third one quickly. Here it is. What is this word? Can you write out the word in the chat box? Unjumble the word and let me know the correct meaningful word. It also has connect with disasters and catastrophes. It is actually, it could be a man-made disaster, right? Um, Let me give that word out to you. It is explode. There it is. Okay, so we come to the end of our jumbled words segment. And now let me give you a quick roundup of all the learnings that we have had in today's writing of an action disaster. First things first, we have the prerequisites. We need to think about the characters. Our lead protagonists are going to be generous souls who are selfless and they want to help people all around, right? And then we have the disastrous situation as well. And finally, the setting of our story, that is, the tone in which the story is going to be set, the place, the sense of place that you want to give to your audiences, the vivid description of maybe the despair and the hope at the same time, right? So that is the setting of our story, again, another prerequisite. And now for the plot building pointers, we have a clash of interest, a conflict going on in our story. There are these disastrous actions that we are going to write about, the after effect of the catastrophe as well. What are people feeling? What are their emotions? How they are clinging on to hope? And what are the different experiences that people have? What are the experiences that the survivors have with this catastrophe? Also, we can talk about the survival mechanism, maybe the survival skills that were put to good use. All of this will form a part of our disastrous action plot building pointer, right? And finally, in the end of the story, how do we want our story to end? So definitely we would want it to have ending full of hope, and ending which is on a positive note. It is definitely not going to be happy because of all of the despair, all of the damage that has been done because of the catastrophe, but we can try and keep it on a satisfying end. We can keep it on a positive note maybe, right? So these were the plot building pointers. And now I would like to really urge all of my viewers here to try and implement all of the learnings from today's episode, and try putting pen to paper and write your first draft of an action disaster. Yes. So, first of all, think about what is that disaster that you're going to write into your story, and then maybe you can revolve the whole story through that plot, right? So, that's the project work that I would definitely want all of you to be doing. And next, tomorrow, I will be coming up with sci-fi as one of the genres. So do stay tuned in with me tomorrow as well at 6 p.m. India time. I am Sapna Mahadevan signing out for today. Have a happy time. Keep smiling. Bye bye.